Hi guys, and welcome to another one in our coffee break sessions. Very pleased to be here today, I say here today virtually of course, with Duncan Beattie from GB Labs. Duncan, how are you doing?
Hey, James, very good. Yeah, thank you. You?
I'm very well, sir, very well. Duncan, I
Excellent,
understand you're
excellent.
the Chief Solutions Officer for GB Labs, is that right?
Mm. Yes, yeah.
Excellent. Do you want to, for those who don't know too much about GB Labs, do you want to give us a bit of a rundown? Who is GB Labs, when was it started, what's it about?
Okay, cool. Yeah, so GB Labs actually was founded in 2000, and we created quite a lot of custom sort of solution builds for editing and field editing, and people like Pinnacle and doing some stuff with Cinewave and things. But really, the company kind of grew immensely in around 2007
Okay.
when we started creating our media storage. So we create storage for media production,
Mhm.
be it from post house all the way down to graphics and sort of media production side corpus and things like that. So yeah, we found a niche a long time ago. Really,
And you're
people
not
just
SAN, aren't you? That's right. I mean, I think, are you a SAN system? Are you a NAS? I mean, online
well,
storage, offline.
yeah. But you know, that's an interesting question because technically we are a NAS. You know, to the computers that connect us, we're NAS, but
Sure.
we're definitely a NAS that's built for media. We're not an IT box that's been sort
Hmm.
of adapted to deliver some video files. It's really built for media stuff. So yeah, it was designed to replace SAN back in back in the day.
Yeah. And I mean, that's one of the things. I mean, obviously, I've worked with GB Labs over the years in both as a customer of GB Labs and also obviously our
Uh,
time at Ortana. And one of the things that I've always found quite interesting about GB Labs is the fact that you have such a nice range of products that. For me, it's always about comparing it to the car. I've got the 4x4 for off-roading. I've got the sports car. I've got the family SUV type thing. And for me, the nice thing about GB Labs is you have that different range of products depending on the use case, but you have that commonality throughout of the core OS. So when it comes to people like ourselves who are looking at doing an integration, it's great because no matter what the client actually needs from a use case perspective, the equipment underneath can change to suit that. I mean, how did it come about? I mean, it's such a great idea, this concept of taking NAS. I mean, NAS, I guess NAS is kind of frowned upon for editing. I mean, surely I need a SAN, right? I mean, how does the NAS handle the loading today, especially 4K? I mean, how did it come about that you adapted to use NAS technology rather than SAN?
um, Well, it's an interesting point you made actually there about the way that you have an idea of a product and so many products in that range.
Hmm.
It's a bit like choosing a car, to be honest. You know, if you like BMWs or Audis or Volkswagen, or whatever, you like the brand and you like what they do and how they do it,
Yeah,
and then you choose which one you need for your job. So yeah, like you said, you could go and get a very sporty BMW. You can go and get an X5, and you can have your, tow your horse box or tow your trailers or do whatever you want. You've got a
sure.
family vehicle, so it's a bit like that for us. And the products have always grown like that. So as we started, we had one product at the beginning, Space, the thing that started it all
Hmm.
designed to replace SAN, and then we introduced an SSD version because spinning disk wasn't quick enough, and then we produced the Bridge thing, which was a recycler. So we'd recycle people's old SAN, and that still gets a lot of use today.
Yeah.
And then we had our Fast NAS range, which is the media production sort of lower cost stuff, and it's quite natural. It just expanded very organically as we realised that the market needed these products. So now, yeah, once you've got the idea of GB Labs and the core OS and what runs it all, and you go, I really like what these guys do. They understand us. Then you can choose which one fits you, and you can grow it and you can change it. You need portable, you need big and fast, or you need slower and really really fast, or big and slow. It really
Hmm.
depends on how you want to do it. And it's nice, and that's what we like about what you guys do as well. Is you've got this idea of this organic growth for the customer. Bearing in mind we came from a reseller background, we
Hmm.
understood the customers. We're trying to find a product that customers couldn't find, and we made one. And we like the logic that you guys do with your software. The same thing.
I think that's key that you mentioned that, again, that organic growth to begin with. It's we've always had a product approach in our development, but categorically we've always been led by customer, and like I say, but just by that
Yeah.
experience, you look around, learn from others, and see what the customer needs, and really put the customer needs first. And if we look at the situation today, I mean, the fact we're not doing this together over a cold pint or in a nice studio is, of
Oh.
course, this new normal that we're having to live with. I mean, if I ask you as certainly as a storage provider, I mean, this lovely phrase of the new normal. I mean, what do you think about that phrase, the new normal?
It's just ridiculous
Okay.
because it's like the word cloud. There are so many different clouds. The cloud is a thing, of course, but that's people's impression is that it's one thing, and it's
Mm.
not. And people say the new normal, and there isn't. It's really isn't. And it's like walking through Soho and expecting every production house to be working the same way. They don't, even the same group.
Yeah,
it's so transient now. The new normal is a painful thing because people just think that working from home is the new normal. Yes, it is to a certain point, but I could be in the office tomorrow. I might have to go in this afternoon,
yeah.
and it's so transient and so flexible, and everything has to start really reacting to that.
The key word there, I think, for me is exactly is flex. I think the new normal, just to replace that word with the need to be able to flex within your workflow, within your environment, within your estate, and to be able to handle, change. So, like you say, today we're all having to work remote because of the current situation, but that will change over time and adapt. And I just think those who have done well or continue to do well are those who have platforms like, I think both our systems that really allow customers to flex within an
Mm.
environment and adapt a workflow, so something to hold together the supply chain or
Yeah.
the processes in question, and really allow for whether to be on-prem or remote or however it needs to be, and then really just be able to adapt and absorb that shockwave of change, if you will, which has led to us not being able to enjoy a pint. That's where we found customers who existing customers have done very well because they had that flex capability with Cubix. We now see a lot of customers going through a business transformation project because they've now got to adapt very quickly on the fly to achieving this flex capability. And that's really where we found that Kiosk, which is our most cost-effective offering of Cubix, really works well because you can layer on top of, say, an existing GB Labs estate, whether that be just one of your small Echo NAS or the Easy LTO or the different solutions you have, all the way up to the high-end pieces, and be able to easily index and adapt and take it a step up from Mosaic. I mean, you guys have Mosaic as a file indexer,
Mm.
and really Kiosk
Mm.
is that kind of next step up to be able to manage some of the transcoding and workflow side, all the way up then obviously to our full Cubix deployment, and that ability again not only to flex within technology capabilities, but to flex within commercials. A customer needs to make a decision quickly. They're not going to have a huge budget to spend,
No, no.
Kiosk is $199 a month for quite a few users and the full capability. So it's something that allows them to get onto that
It's a
workflow
very good
ladder.
starting point. Yeah,
And
really
I
good
think
starting point.
but again with yourselves, you don't have to have. I mean, as I understand your base system that you could buy, is really quite cost effective. And as I understand, you can
Mm.
again scale up or sideways, if you will, within that. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, you can get started with the base system for sort of $10,000,
Mm,
which is the base storage system. Again, it's compact and really quick. But what you mentioned about this kind of flexibility, I think a good phrase at the moment is kind of everything's a bit transient because
yeah.
things are changing so quickly. However, what has become really obvious to us in the last, I would say, 2 months. I mean, bearing in mind we started this whole thing in March, right? So here we are
Yeah.
in August, thinking it was going to be a 3 month thing, and we're all settling into the new normal. Um,
The flex.
but yeah, the flexible world, the transient world. It's weird because actually it's almost taken us back to the beginning of production. Before we had shared storage, which is what we have been doing for all this time,
Mm,
people had workstations doing editing. They had a guy doing graphics somewhere. They had another machine doing some audio. Then they'd be backing up to a zip drive, if anyone remembers that.
I
I'm old
sadly
enough
do.
to remember them.
They were very cool.
100 and then 250 and Psychest drives, and then the old Quadras that had a zip built into them, and all this kind of thing. But then you'd have SCSI drives, and you'd have to get them to transferring data around and put them on data and put them on the shelf and that kind of thing. And then we all went shared storage, and everything was wonderful. Everyone had these massive systems in house, these on-premise storage systems, and everything worked brilliantly. And then this happened, and
Mm,
it's almost gone back to it. So your Psychest drive or your zip drive has been replaced with a potentially cloud backup. You've now got cloud storage services. You've got people transferring files by WeTransfer, and if they've got the budget, then they buy some really good systems like Aspire and File
mm,
Catalyst and Signal, all those guys, the file transfer guys. And then they've gone back to this old way of working where everything's now disjointed again,
yeah.
and it's a real challenge for businesses
Well,
to be able
security as
to
well.
bring
I
that
mean,
back.
you
Yeah,
have
obviously.
the classic of remote editor now working at home, and whilst he or she can build the
Yeah, on
environment that's
4K, right?
suitable, and for exactly, but they can build the
Yeah.
environment, they can jokingly set up an Atmos studio at home or whatever, but they still have the challenge of incredibly heavy files. And even if they've got the best internet in the world, it's like you say, it's going out of the normal workflow, out of the secure environment. And like you say, logically, it is like the Jazz drive, whether it's a WeTransfer link
Mm.
or literally shipping a USB hard drive. We're back to that disjointed, not connected workflow that security and everything aside is a nightmare.
Generally, if you're working like that, if you are still on premise up in London and Soho, it's probably still now quicker, now that no one's really driving around as much, to jump on a bike and take something to somebody than try and
Yeah,
transfer it through all the security loopholes, because whatever cloud system they're using is not connected to what you're doing, and then not connected to your service. So really, just through an air gap and then load it in and off you go. But that's not sustainable.
no, and
It
it's
never
scaring
was, and it
me.
never will be.
But it's scaring me now how many calls we're having with customers where they're going, yeah, so we need to track these USB hard drives because that's now become the transport. Yeah, exactly. It's the old zip drive. It's phenomenal, and I think that that whole, like you say, transformation, change, that reactivity, that need to flex is key. But I think there's a real inflection point to sort of look forward into the future and sort of go, well, we need to be able to handle these events. With the way we're doing it
Mm.
now is very active, and some are doing it better than others. But there is that need to, like I say, absorb change, adapt to change, and
Yeah.
the cloud is it's always sold as the ubiquitous answer, and we have a lot of clients who are completely cloud-based. Content is born in the cloud, processed in the
Mm.
cloud, distributed in the
Yeah.
cloud, and it works very,
Some
very
great
well for that.
solutions,
Yeah,
great solutions in the cloud, like yours. Some
but
fantastic stuff out there.
but we also have clients who, like I say, shooting on red or ARI, and either for security or cost reasons, the thought of using cloud storage or using just cloud storage, should I say, is prohibitive. It just doesn't make sense in the
Mm.
workflow. It actually adds cost. So it's billed as this, super efficient means of absorbing flex, when actually, because I mean bandwidth today, our internet's getting better, but especially when you're working with international productions,
Mm.
it's just not viable. And sure, Glacier now offering $1 a terabyte. I mean that surely that's the end of GB Labs if storage is so cheap. And then you see it's a 48-hour restore time, and it's punitive on the restores, and the restore speeds are incredibly slow. So I think there's a real danger with the cloud, and we try and work with clients to manage. We work with different cloud providers, and Cubix is obviously naturally age content between different tiers, and that tiering can be on-prem, can be in the cloud, or
Mm.
between clouds.
Mm.
But the key thing is really the storage mix. I mean, we talk about the Jazz drive. If we go back to that point in time, there was you bought a storage platform,
Yeah.
singular. It was the big Oracle or Sun or whatever, whatever the platform may have been, and it was significant investment. It was a 5, 10, 15 year life cycle, and still many have those kind of larger, thinking of the Diva systems are like still
Mm.
around today. Um, but it's not like that now. I mean, if you think now about the storage, it's very much far more nuanced about the content type or the workflow, or like you say, that change that needs to happen. This week, all of a sudden, now we're shooting back on set, and then next week we're going to be remote again. And I think
Mm.
for me, where we've tried to position ourselves is to be all we don't mind. You can work with GB Labs, you can work with any of the other on-prem providers, you can also work with any of the cloud providers. And am I right in understanding you've got some new features coming that have a bit of a similar approach where customers can mix and match storage? I mean, do you want to tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the thing about how things have changed now. This kind of the workflow is now almost like 15-year-old workflow, because you've got these disparate pots of stuff, but you've still got this on premise, and people have invested in their storage, whatever it may be.
Yeah,
And certainly working with your platform, you've got the great ability to be able to have stuff in cloud if you want to, but you also work with on-premise storage, so you can have that bridge. And
yeah,
we've been working with cloud for a long time, and we've had Amazon integration, AWS integration for exchanging data for about 4 or 5 years now. With a recent update, we've added another more cloud providers like Dropbox and Backblaze and other providers, which are working really well. However, it's not flexible enough. We don't believe it's flexible enough. So actually, we've got a new product coming on at the moment called Unify,
okay,
and this is really something that we've done about bringing cloud and on-premise storage back together again, and actually getting it to work how people want it to work and how people need it to work. Because there we go. So what we've really got is the ability to be able to have cloud and stuff linking together, right? So not only do we have the ability to be able to have our own storage shares, our own storage workspaces output,
right,
for example, to S3, so you can get to our storage as an S3 endpoint. We have the ability to bring cloud storage pods inside our storage and share them out locally as accessible workspaces,
so
alongside the existing format you have already, which you're used to because you played
yeah,
around the Core OS quite a lot.
so if I get that right, so I can have a on-prem, if you will, head
Yes.
presenting one or more different types of cloud, You're saying obviously a number of
Yep.
different providers there.
We've got a long list coming out. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can mount that just as a Samba or NFS or
Yeah.
AFP type. Okay, wow.
Hmm.
And then
Yeah.
I love the idea on the flip side of that. I mean, obviously that's great for on-prem clients who need to have that, but the idea then of having bizarrely the opposite, well, like you say, you making the GB Labs an S3 endpoint is great for those people who are a pure cloud workflow today and are looking at needing to adapt to some on-prem storage for performance reasons or something. And obviously S3 is a connector now; it's so ubiquitous. There's so many bits of software have that already.
Well, it's built for cloud.
Yeah.
SMB and the normal protocols are not built to be out in the open.
Mm.
They're built to be a local network. They're optimized for local traffic, which is why we get so much performance when you're editing off our storage.
Yeah. Uh,
But they're not built for VPN tunnels. They're not.
yeah. And I'm right in saying then that if you're a vendor like ourselves who's done the integration with CoreOS, features like with the hyperspace, the caching and everything, does that work
Yeah.
the same then with these? Or?
Well, the hyperspace is a little bit different. So, the hyperspace is our accelerator, which we launched in 2014, and it's a layer of SSD that combines with a spinning disk. But what's fairly unique about that is that we watch, even without client software, over normal protocols, we can watch and learn what is the most busy data. So as you pull that data through,
Yeah.
we add that and copy it to the SSD layer. So when you access it again, it comes from the SSD and reads from there rather than the storage disk. So we've had customers with 8 SSDs and 16 drives, and the system delivering 2.5, 3 gigabytes a second, and the disks are doing nothing at all
Wow.
because it's all automatically cached.
Yeah.
The key thing about that is if you are writing back and rendering back to storage, you're writing here and reading from here, and we have the same thing in FastNAS. It's like having it's like getting S-class technology inside your A-class. You can see it and go, "That's great," but you get a little bit in the junior version of it, as it like. So it's a really nice way of expanding that. So we've taken that concept and we've now added the ability to be able to allocate areas on our storage which will hold copies of the most accessed clouds data.
Right. So
So
the same kind of
actually,
caching
your
approach with the cloud
kind
from the
of,
cloud.
yeah, sort of, but it means that your fees for bringing these files down are greatly reduced because once you've accessed them once, we then take a copy.
That's
Yeah.
happening under the hood, so I'm guessing there's no need for any sort of admin or effort. It's just an
Oh,
automatic
you can
dynamic
admin
process.
it, you can override it, and you can do stuff with it. But generally, you just leave it alone to do its thing. Just like hyperspace, it does its thing. We understand what people need it to do, so we make it do it.
So I'm guessing with
Which
that,
we've always done, which is similar to what you guys do. Which is why we love working with you, because we can really see that your software is designed because people need these functions, so you built them in, as opposed to you coming up with a great function and going, "This is amazing. I hope our clients like it." It's a flip side,
Yeah, I mean, Cubix, as you know, is made up of many different bits of software, but
Yeah.
we don't talk about the software themselves as products. We talk about the use cases, and those use cases are born out of our expertise as an orchestration platform. We are not a MAM as much now as we are a media orchestrator. It's really everybody now needs workflow. MAM is a byproduct of workflow. It's no longer the mainstay. But absolutely, we work with customers to understand the use case, the nuance, the detail, and then create that as a product. So our product for VOD fulfillment is over tens of years of experience with many different broadcasters and small facilities. And the nice thing is that, like I say, our commercial model scales and contracts to suit the size of the customer and the need. And more recently, of course, we've launched our appliances, which takes that even further, where if I just need to have a transcoder, but I want to use something like a Cubix, which has that real powerful MAM metadata media first type approach where we understand in detail the asset, so we can make far more intelligent decisions in the workflow. That allows us to be a very powerful transcoder. And ironically, we're more cost effective than most of the traditional transcoders in the marketplace. Same if we want to do an LTM migration. If we had like an old Diva system, we wanted to move on to GB Labs or something as a target, we have an appliance solution for that. And these are the same software. It's the same Cubix technologies elements being used. It's just we're changing the licensing model to allow you to, like you say, to get that A-class, S-class features, but molded to what the client needs, because I know if I'm a transcoder, I want the following capabilities. If I'm working in Soho and I'm doing ingest into Avid, I need Signiant, I need a Spiro support. So we really tailor those solutions down to match that. And so I think that pairing of our two technologies is quite key. And I know we've got the bridge. You talk about reuse. We're a real believer in, we don't go to a client and say, right, you've got to buy X servers, this storage, or anything like that. We really want to wrap into their existing estate, reuse what we can, and we only run the bits we need. Cubix is a very modular stack from a software perspective, but it means then that I don't need to run 50 services if I'm only actually working with 4 devices. I can only run what I need and where I need to run them. So it makes it quite light as well, and that's a key thing from a deployment time because, again, we're talking about this flex and the new normal. You've got to be able to move quickly. Deployment times can't be months; they need to be days or even hours now.
We've always wanted our storage to fit the client. So, people go, well, how can you copy your data from one to the other? And you go, well, actually, you can do it about 4 different ways. Because we don't know which way is going to fit the client, as opposed to you can only do it this way, so you have to change your workflow to get a copy of your data to here.
It's a routine phrase on many demos I do where we say, absolutely, well, there's 3 ways of doing it. And, some clients are like, oh, he hasn't answered the question. It's like, well, no, I really have, but I can show you this way and this way. Because like you say, we're a big believer. When we rock up with our, say, VOD platform, it's a default config from years of experience. But it's a config, which means we tweak and tailor and adjust, and we have the phrase at the moment of mind the gap. Often if you look at workflows, you find that there's vendor gaps, basically where one vendor was going to do this and didn't quite as part of the deployment, and then another vendor picks up, and in between there's a real resource drain. Where it was a manual step that was never envisaged or part of it. And we always look to remove vendor gaps, either by deploying an appliance in that space or by ensuring when we're doing full workflow deployments that we really, like you say, butt up to and integrate deep into, whether we're working with people like yourselves, or again, that's why we always consume APIs where we can, because you have to have that deep integration and that ability to change workflows and configure to tweak. So yes, no product is ever off the shelf in our world. And I think those who try and pigeonhole customers to we're a big believer technology should wrap around the customer, not the other way around. And I think those vendors who try and make a customer change their workflow are the ones who, and again, that's just it's a very old hat way of thinking. And I think that's really what I like about Unify, is because what you're kind of saying there is that I can pick today almost an all on-prem solution from GB Labs, add on the Unify module, and then as quickly or slowly as I see fit, I can migrate to almost an entirely 100% cloud-based solution or flex back and forth. And I think that's something that's really quite, as we come back to, say, our new normal and that flex capability, I mean, that's so key. And the fact then that because that's working with the same APIs and interfaces and everything you have today, it doesn't affect anything sat on top. And of course, our ability to manage cloud very much complements that rather than compete. So yeah, my mind is just kind of going crazy with the idea of the workflows that we could achieve with that within sort of post-production clients and distribution clients, and those who are just looking for not being boxed in. I think that's the key thing that I like about Unify, is that you're not making them stay with it, because presumably all the data is stored in an open format. So if I then took one of those cloud buckets that you were controlling and decided to manage it with another system, it's just standard cloud data, right? I mean, there's nothing proprietary about it.
Well, that's the point, isn't it? Because, and this is why we're saying, this is why the new normal is the same as the cloud. They're both totally annoying phrases, because you say the cloud, but really the cloud just means it's someone on someone else's servers somewhere else that you connect to via the internet. That's essentially what it is. It's a collection of lots and lots and lots of different services and different data centers and different data points, and where is your stuff and what are you doing with it. So actually looking at what we're doing, like you said, you might have a customer that's got one of our storage systems, and they go, right, let's get the new OS on there, get the new version of Core, get the Unify module, and now I'm going to have my automation watch it. So we have automation, you guys have automation, macros, watch folders, that kind of stuff, trigger points, file trigger points, namings, extensions, etc. It's part of normal workflow. But you've got your normal workspace that you're working from, your normal shared area that your editors are working from. But if you want to start delivering stuff off to a cloud endpoint for encoders to pick it up in cloud, for example, we can do that 2 or 3 different ways. We can replicate the data to it, so we can push it out. We can do automation, so we can send it to a cloud bucket. Or now with Unify, we can actually create a completely new workspace that is seen locally as an SMB share or an AFP share or whatever, but actually also is exported to an S3 endpoint, so the encoder sees it directly. It doesn't have to go through these steps. So any file that we place in there locally is then seen and pulled off by that encoding platform and then taken somewhere else. Or because it's an S3 endpoint, it could be picked up from a home worker who's got an S3 client, and they can connect into it and do it that way. So it's being and working with the Mosaic side, which is our asset organizer, is it's like a pathway to man. It's not designed to replace man. It's designed to get customers into the idea of managing media
Yeah.
when they're too scared off by it initially, and they go, "Oh, this is really great," and then they look out there and they find great products like Ortana and Cubix and all those things, and go, "Ah, actually, I've got an idea why this is good to have, but now I want something that's really going to do so much more for me." So we've got a lot of sales for media for MAM solutions because people have started using Mosaic for free on the storage, and that means that can then go out and be shared out to them, and they can pick that up and see that as well. So that works really well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, yeah, it's like I say, unfortunately, we're coming to the end of our time today, but there's so many different workflows that we could look at with that. And I think the key thing is with the, like you say, just in our experience, one of the most reliable way of transferring files over low latency connections is the S3 protocol, because it is fault tolerant. Obviously, your blobbing of data and just it's stateful.
It's built for it. Yeah.
Well, good old days of FTP, God forbid, but you remember when files stopped growing, therefore it must be done. Actually, it's only partway through. Connections dropped, all of that. So yeah, absolutely, moving to S3 as a protocol, like you say, built from the ground up for that purpose. And yeah, I think that fluidity that you have of being able to push to S3 or other cloud bucket targets to be an S3 target is quite exciting. Phenomenal. Excellent. Well, look, like I say, I'm sure we could talk and talk as we could. It's been a real pleasure today. Thank you, Duncan, for telling us a bit more about that.
Good to talk to you again. Good to see you again.
And you. And look, guys, thank you very much for watching these sessions. We do work with many partners around the world, but we do like to work specifically with partners who, as Duncan and I said, have a very similar approach to methodology. I think we can both say we try and put the customer first in everything we do, from a technology, design, commercials and sales. And yeah, it's we're very excited to be doing these sessions with the likes of GB Labs, and we're very excited to see where Unify goes. It's it's interesting times. So Duncan, keep safe, all the best, and we'll see you soon.
Okay, brilliant.
Cheers.
Thank you. Thanks, James.